Before we get started, I want to set everybody up with a little introduction. The introduction is about absolutes and my quest to find them. As a professional player and instructor, I have always sought absolutes. I wanted to know definitively that if I did or taught X and Y, the result would always be Z. From a teaching perspective, this resolute course of action has led me to seek the most scientifically verified information of golf swing mechanics and acquire some of the game's most sophisticated measuring devices, such as the FlightScope X2 radar and the K-Vest 3D motion capture system. The FlightScope X2 radar provides me with club and ball data vital to understanding a player's impact conditions. The K-Vest system gives me a detailed set of illustrations and data from the hips, trunk, and lead arm in three-dimensional perspective for every swing it captures. The two systems running simultaneously offer a potent mix in assessing exactly what is occurring in any particular swing. As far as scientifically verified information goes, this video and myself look no further than Dr. Stephen Nesbitt, world-renowned golf scientist, most known for his recent contributions in defining and explaining torques and forces present in the golf swing. Let's take a quick look at a graph that we will refer to throughout the show. The graph on the screen illustrates the torques present in an optimal downswing and is a summation of much of Stephen Nesbitt's work. This graph can be looked at as a golfer's DNA. The closer they are to achieving the appropriate amounts of each torque at the right time might be the ultimate absolute in determining their success as a player. The graph will be analyzed in thirds and will be labeled as phase 1, 2, and 3 accordingly.
Hi there everybody, Richard Franklin, Director of Instruction at Deer Path Golf Course, coming back at you for another special episode of the Circle Systems Golf Show. We've got a really important topic to discuss today. We're calling it deconstructing the downswing. So without further ado, let me introduce, it's a pleasure to have him here today, my friend and student, Chip Beck.
Thrilled to be here. Richard has been very helpful in turning my game around, and just thrilled to be part of it. He's a great teacher.
I really appreciate that, Chip. I can't tell you how excited I am about presenting to everybody out there some really cutting edge and different information that you've probably never heard before. So in previous episodes, we've talked about torques present in the golf swing, and I had amazing feedback from students that the curiosity was perked. So we're going to try to integrate some different tools. We're going to talk about some things that me and Chip work on when we're working together. We're going to introduce to you the K-Vest, which is a three-dimensional motion capture system, and we're going to really do a good job here in trying to explain how particular body movements in the swing coordinate and facilitate the all-important wrist torques on the club. So before we get into starting phase 1 correctly and in the multitude of ideas of the hand torques, we need to discuss proper grip. And fortunately, Chip has an unbelievable product that I fully support. I use with all my junior students to really make getting the grip put on properly so we can apply those all-important torques during the downswing. So I'm going to let Chip explain what we're talking about here.
Well, we know today that placement of the left thumb, if you're a right-handed player, predetermines how you swing.
Absolutely.
Because what Richard's talking about is if you have your thumb at 12 o'clock, well, there's no way that you can be in a biomechanically strong position. You'll have to bow the wrist to square that face. Whereas if you take it and put it at 1 o'clock, where you have the hand on top, it's classic Barden style, which allows you to hit all the combination of shots. The high ball, the high hook, the high cut, as well as the low ball. And that's predicated really by thumb placement and putting your centers of gravity on the club properly.
Phase number 1, the all-important starting of the downswing. Now, there's some critical components we have to get right in body values that we use the K-Vest to help address, and we're going to talk about how that relates to torques here in 1 minute. So, I'm going to have Chip take his setup here, and we're going to see on the screen to the right certain bend values. So at address, Chip has his pelvis bent over 23 degrees. That's a fairly typical range of start. He'll also have his torso bent over about 40 degrees, very typical for a good player. Now, as he makes a backswing, you're going to see those bend values decrease. So Chip, if you would. Very good. So what you'll see at the very top of his swing, his torso is 1 degree bent over and his pelvis is 21. Now these are critical alignments. Thank you, Chip. I have you take a rest. Those are critical alignments for starting properly in phase 1. So again, to reiterate, Chip, who was initially bent over 40 degrees at the top, has taken out all of that bend in his backswing. So essentially that would look like fully bent over, I stood up, and I made some side bend. So now, Chip, if you would, just a little key into some of the things that we've worked on in the past is Chip has a tendency, see if you can be 20 bent over the top for me, Chip. Exactly. Okay, so Chip in the past has come back like so many players out there who are a little bit too bent over at the top. You'll see the value on the right-hand side. He's got 15 degrees of forward bend. So now in this phase here, where Chip has taken all that forward bend out, just a side note, a decent drill here, hands behind your back, stretch your chest up to the sky. That's a great drill for those that are looking for that last little bit of extension here in the chest. Now, phase 1 of the downswing, when this left arm is across the chest, to the left arm parallel to the ground, it is a pure pulling motion. It is purely pulling. That is that alpha torque that we've discussed in effect. So it's just a pure pulling motion. Now Chip, if you would, 20 degrees bent over, please. What you would notice when Chip is 20 degrees bent over, now go ahead and pull. He's too late. He should be already in phase 2 of the downswing, which we're going to discuss now. So again, having an ability to pull, these hands feel like they go away from the target slightly. This pulling is facilitated by having proper thoracic bend at the top of the swing. Okay, so here we are in phase 2 of the downswing. The all-important part where the good player really separates himself from the poor player. Now, phase 2 is categorized by a severe uptick in beta torque. So we're going to discuss that right now. So Chip, if you would, I'm going to have you go to the top of your swing. Now, discussed again in phase 1 was this pure pulling motion, this alpha torque, and even a little bit of negative beta, which you'd see good players kind of flatten the shaft out. That's a typical view. Now, when this left arm is parallel to the target, Chip is applying a very liberal amount of beta torque, as well as a still ramped up pull. One more time for me, Chip. What I'd like players to understand is that in this secondary phase, that if you just kept pulling on the shaft and didn't have any beta, you would see this right shoulder get into side bend too much and this right arm wouldn't straighten. So these are all telltale signs of somebody not applying, one more time for me please, not applying enough beta. To wrap this up, let's give you guys a drill at home that can help you coordinate that alpha with the positive beta right in this phase. There's really not a better drill than this. Is that I would have everybody at home take a split grip with their handle in their hands, and then from here, I would have them from the top feel this pure pulling along the shaft, and then take the position of their right hand and switch it from under to over. So I would go like this. So you would go to the top and you would see this on-plane motion with the hands, this pure pulling, and then the left arm would steepen and the right hand would come on top. So again, from the top you would pull to left arm, and then start getting your right hand on top and just coordinate those motions. Phase 3, the moment of truth, i.e. going normal. And really going normal is just a fancy way of saying that all the force when you strike the ball should be going towards you, should be going straight into the player. I can't tell you how many players I see on my lesson tee that just this concept of There's no force across the shaft, or they don't have to have their hands going lower at the ball or something crazy like that, that all this force is towards you at the ball has made such a big improvement. So to demonstrate that, I'm gonna have Chip take his setup, and I do this with countless amounts of players where I would have my hand simply on their club head. I would say, okay, go ahead and tell me which way you think the force should be going. So Chip, I'm gonna have you do this incorrectly and have the force going across the shaft. Just go ahead and push. I see a lot of that on the lesson tee. And now Chip's been with me long enough to know that that's not where he wants the force. So now he's gonna go ahead and just pull straight up for me. Good. One more time. Good. That's it. So we're going to talk about some of the body values that help him create that upward or into force. He's got, like we were discussing before, 0 bend values and 17 bent forward in the pelvis. As he starts coming down into the striking position, as he's anticipating all of this force coming into him, you're going to notice a sharp decrease in how much pelvic bend Chip has at impact. So at impact here, we've got a pelvic bend value going sharply to 0. So his pelvis is tucking under him, and he's also exchanging forward bend in his spine for right side bend. You can clearly see this motion of the player pushing off of the ground, extending both his hips and his trunk in an effort to create that normal force. So very good, Chip. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got 2 excellent drills to help facilitate a perfect phase 3 going normal. The first that I'm gonna have Chip demonstrate is just, we call it the hockey shot, okay? So he's gonna set up with a split grip like we were kind of doing in phase 2, and he's gonna demonstrate the motion that we want late in the downswing. So what you would notice is this handle feels like it's pulling back, and he's using pelvic and thoracic extension to help pull in even greater. This is an absolute must for anybody who's trying to hit the ball further. Thank you, Chip. The second drill that we like to promote the wrist angles that accommodate an effective phase 3 is simply working on his finish. So if we know that all of this is going on where we have flexion, extension of the wrist, we have negative alpha pulling back on the handle.
I created this screen to show the viewer what negative alpha torque looks like near impact. Using the plane board as a reference, negative alpha would be a pulling back of the handle. This motion strongly correlates to the highlighted portion of the lead wrist graph at the top of the screen, which is a player's wrist rapidly going into extension or bending back on itself. The highlighted portion of both graphs is the ideal scenario for any player.
So Chip, what I'm going to have you do, I'm going to show the audience here exactly how we do this, is if Chip just had his club out in front of him, and then he bent back his left wrist. He had his head stay where it was, and he sort of finished going through the ball and rotating his wrist onto the plane. That would very much look like a professional post-impact alignment. So I'm going to have you do that one more time for me, Chip. So to understand how the wrists and the body are coordinating themselves, so I'm going to have him have the shaft up like it's on a tabletop. And then so just for you at home, sort of a side piece here, if Chip side bends his right shoulder down and he feels like he's pulling in on that shaft, what you would notice is that this face would have a tendency to ride open. That's why you see the expert player apply such a strong amount of gamma rotation to get the face squared up. So the improving player, thank you, Chip, I'll have you stand up again. The improving player that's having extension and side bend through the ball but is neglecting gamma is a chronically open face player, and then he'll recruit more high right shoulder to square it and totally corrupting the sequence. So again, I think this is a great drill to have players demonstrate that, wow, I need to really gamma twist. I'll say that's impact. Guys will look at me funny, and then I'll say, okay, keep that twist, show me side bend, and they're looking at a de-lofted, very square face. Okay, so now what he'll do is, because the wrists are going from bent to flex through the shot, and the lead arm is supinating, that would be the look that we're trying to have, where his belt is ahead of his neck, his left wrist is bent and supinated in that alignment right there. Strive for those critical wrist and body alignments, and you will have mastered phase 3.